So if you hear some banging in the background, it's probably because there's a crew up there of about 15 people ripping off my roof and putting on a new one.
So you said you have some scoop for me or something. I don't know if you want to do it on here or not, but I can't wait to hear that. But really, when I reached out to you, this is what I was thinking about. I was thinking about how crazy it was, and maybe this happens to you all the time, but it's never happened to me. So I saw your dad do I guess a kind of a mini concert at a men's Christian business conference. Okay, like it wasn't men's; it was just a Christian business conference. So I see him. Driscoll is not like a weird name, but it's kind of unique, and it's not a lot of people that you meet with the last name Driscoll. So I see him like 20 years before I meet you, and I'm like, this dude is phenomenal. I mean, just, obviously he grew up there, right? So then fast forward probably close to 20 years later, I meet you. You've got that last name. I know you for a few months, and I never bring this up. And then I bring it up. You are actually related. That is your dad, right? So, and then you told me the story about like growing up in, I guess it was in the LA area, and kind of like the music industry, and kind of, I don't want to tell your story there because I only heard it once and I don't remember it anywhere close to perfectly. But I would love to hear like how that whole thing started, and then how you got to where we met, which is, through another company that you had started and taken public and everything. And then kind of that whole, I don't know if matriculation is the right word there, but how that whole process worked. And then what you got going on now. And I know there's military in the middle there. I'd love to hear a few stories about that.
Yeah. So funny thing about when we met, I go down to Anna Maria Island every year. I've been going down there for about 8 or 9 years, and we plan a night. We invite our friends and family, and there's a chef down there that cooks. She's from South Africa, and I actually found her on an app called Thumbtack. That's one of my secrets to finding people wherever I am, to try to, if I need work done, I need something, an expert, I go to Thumbtack. Anyway, so Chef Cheryl is her name, and I found her, and she's been cooking for our family for, I guess, going on, this will be the ninth or 10th year. And I have a couple of giant schnauzers. She loves my dogs. And so a few months ago, we went down, and a friend of mine has a couple houses next to each other on the canal there in Anna Maria Island. So we were going to have Chef Cheryl come just do a dinner for 4 people. And we're at the house next door, and Chef Cheryl's at the other house preparing. And my neighbors and my friends are over there with her. And they happen to mention, something about Phil Driscoll. And Chef Cheryl was like, Phil Driscoll, I lived in South Africa. We went to Rainbow Bible College, and, he is like, to me, in my life, he's like Elvis. He's bigger than Elvis. And my friend Paula looks at her, and she goes, you do know that's Shawn's dad. And she literally about fell over. She was like, you mean to tell me I've been cooking for him for 9 years? And his father is like, one of the people that I look at and respect the most. My husband was a pilot. They would fly into mission fields, and we would always be playing his music when we'd be flying these little planes in the mission field. So anyway, long story short, she had no idea. She gave me up the road and back about not telling her. And I actually later that night arranged a Zoom call, or actually a FaceTime call, so she could meet my dad and say hello. And so it's funny you say that. That kind of happens to me a lot when people kind of figure it out. They're like, there's something unique about him. He must have grown up in a weird, in a different place than some people. And then they put all the pieces together, and they find out about, who my dad is. And anyway, but back to what you were talking about. Yeah, so I grew up in East Tennessee. I was born in St. Louis. I was joking. I had my 50th birthday party at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. This is 4 years ago. As a kid, I lived in that hotel because my dad had the house band at the Starlight Room. Oh, wow. And I ran out of that hotel. My brother was actually born in that hotel. But music's kind of always been a part of my life. But I was born in St. Louis, grew up in East Tennessee. And then, kind of went, when I was 18, went in the Marine Corps, worked, for the JAG Corps, the Marine Corps. got out, went to college, went into the finance world, into financial planning, and then, through a different series, kind of worked in that for a while, and then my dad moved out to Los Angeles. I had been out there before, but as a kid, I was on tour with the Rolling Stones, Joe Cocker, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and, just kind of lived in that, rock and roll tour life. I remember distinctively when I was a kid being on stage. I think it was in probably Cleveland, Ohio, maybe Cleveland, but I remember it was a Joe Cocker concert, and there's probably 100,000 people there, and the Hells Angels were the bouncers. They all wore orange T-shirts. And as a 7, 8-year-old kid, you look out over a sea of people, and you see all these motorcycle gangs, bikers as the security. It's kind of one of my core memories. It kind of leaves a lasting impression in your head. But anyway, that was kind of my life. Recording studios, tours, making records, living that whole world. But as I got older, there's an opportunity for us to go out to Los Angeles. We actually were involved in buying Barbra Streisand's old recording studio called Evergreen. And Evergreen, was a very iconic place because it was the original movie theater built in Burbank in, I think, maybe the early 50s, maybe. Anyway, but it was converted into a recording studio. And we got a hold of it, and I pretty much rehabbed that place, worked on it with a team of engineers, and then kind of networked my way through the music industry in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and was out there for 6 or 7 years. And I came up with the idea of taking my business background in music, and I came up with the concept of Loop TV. And I was joking with somebody the other day. I was like, when I think about it, I put Loop on a whiteboard. My lease went up on my house, and I was staying in my brother's guest house, and I had a whiteboard. I'm just like, well, what's my next move? What am I going to do now? And so I started drawing this concept for Loop on a whiteboard. I still got pictures of it. And all these people would filter in and out. Musicians, all kinds of people. And they would always ask me, what is that you're drawing or building? I'm like, that's this crazy idea I have about taking music videos, streaming content into businesses, and selling advertising around it. And they were like, oh, that's crazy. And some people were like, man, that's a great idea. Some people were like, and that's going to take a lot of work. I hope that works out for you. And so I remember that. And the difference between people that are successful and people that aren't is the ability to put what I call the grind factor in, to where you grind every day on your idea and you don't quit no matter what. I don't care if it's raining, snowing, icing. If you're broke, you have no money, you do have money, whatever situation you're in, you just can't quit. And so when we met, I had, taken that idea, raised a lot of money, gotten it off the ground, gotten the product, built the company, put a team together, and then I met you during that time to help Loop in the idea that I had to distribute that into the businesses, and that's kind of how we met at that time back in Nashville. So that's kind of a bird's eye view of my life in 120 seconds. How's that?
Yeah. That's awesome. And, some people probably won't know who your dad is. He's a Grammy award-winning, like you mentioned, Rolling Stones, Joe Cocker, some other folks. Your dad wasn't just a musician. He was like a musician. He is spectacular.
Some people call him, probably one of the best, if not the best, trumpet players that have ever lived. He's 79 now. He flies his own airplane. He still plays his trumpet. He's in the middle of writing a book right now. Looks like we're going to do a record. And then he wants to do a tour, which, he's asked me to produce for him. So I'm working on that in my free time, which is not very much. He wants to do a night, what he's calling a night of hymns. Oh. When he did a classic hymns album. There was probably like 25 hymns on it with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And he wants to do a night of hymns in the cities with the local orchestra and do a multimedia presentation about the story of the hymns and where it came from. And bring in legacy artists like maybe Amy Grant or Sandy Patty or, who knows who we're going to bring on the tour. But it's going to be a pretty interesting concept. But he's wanted to do it for a long time. We've got all the music and we've got all the, we're going to bring a choir in, do a choir. And so we think that's going to be quite a project to work on. So I'm kind of excited about that. In my free time.
Yeah, in your free time. You said do whatever it takes, whenever it takes. I was up till 3:07 sitting over here on the sofa getting some stuff done because I knew I had a bunch of stuff going on today during the day. And if I'm going to do something like this, I got to make sure all the people that they don't work for, they're independent contractors, but I got to get stuff done so that I can have this time during the day to meet with you. So I was up last night, till dark 30 or whatever. So yeah, I hear you.
Right.
You said your dad's a great trumpet player. I got to tell you, man, I think he's got just as good a voice as he does talent with the trumpet. He is spectacular. Absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple. Nobody's got CDs anymore. I don't even have a CD player, I don't think. Maybe in my truck. I don't even know if it works anymore. But I have the CDs still. I got a bunch of CDs, DVDs, and videos in a plastic bin downstairs in my garage, and I know I got a couple of Phil Driscoll in there. So
I got a call from a friend of mine. He's Dionne Warwick's son. His name is Damon Elliott, and I play guitar, and we produced a record for him. He went by the stage name of Buck 22, but we did Achy Breaky Heart, but I did a song with Big and Rich playing guitar, but during that time, my dad did a duet with Dionne Warwick, and it's in 2014, and it actually has, I think it has like over 6 million streams on it, and it's my dad and Dionne. I think they wrote and sang it, and played it together, but it's got it's trumpet on it, and they sing a duet, but it's an amazing song. But she's releasing a new duet album. That's why he called me, and he was like, "Hey, I'm just calling to let you know." And I think Diane Warren's writing all the music for it. Anyway, that it always kind of drifts in. Music's always kind of been a big part of my life. But he's recorded 39 albums, I think now.
Ooh.
39. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, from jazz to classical. He recorded his first album at 17 with the Stockholm Symphony Orchestra called A Touch of Trumpet.
Was it in Stockholm?
It was in Stockholm, yeah. He was a prodigy. Wow. But his first guitar, most people don't realize, at 10, I think he won like $30,000 playing competitions, playing the lap steel guitar. That was his first instrument.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. You know what? I think I saw a YouTube video where he's playing steel guitar. This was like years ago, but now you saying that brought it back to my memory. I hadn't thought about that. I think so.
Mm-hmm. If you go to Spotify, you can pull it up. We've done a lot of like old time like rock and roll records. He remade a lot of Stand By Me, Try a Little Tenderness. I went Sunday night. I went to hear Robert Plant. Robert Plant has put a not a new band. They've been around since about 2019, but it's called Saving Grace. And it was amazing. It really was. It was.
Oh, I lost your audio there for a second. Can you still hear me? I don't know what happened. Nothing. And then like the little lights aren't even bouncing up and down anymore. Sometimes I gotta sign out, sign back in. I don't know if that might fix it. I don't know. Are you back? You can hear me, right? Okay. No, nothing. I can't hear you at all. It's really weird. No. On this, it says everything is hooked up properly. You want to see about go out and come back in? I don't know if that'll... I could shut this one down and then start it back up again. I don't know what you're saying. Go out and come back in. See if that works. If that doesn't work, I'll shut the whole thing down and come back, and we'll start back up.
You guys start getting one.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Am I back?
You're back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I got a big question for you.
Okay.
Because you just said you went to Robert Plant. He's got an album coming out, Amazing Grace. What did you say it was?
Okay. So Robert Plant put a group together called Saving Grace. Okay, let me back up a little bit. So in 2007, he did an album with Alison Krauss. And most people don't know this, but before Beyonce won her last Grammy, I think Alison Krauss has won more Grammys than any other woman in music history. And so Allison did a record with Robert Plant, and I forget the name of it, but it was phenomenal. And so after that, Robert Plant put together a group called Saving Grace, and it's him and another young girl. I don't know if this is right. I heard this was right. I think it might be John Bonham's sister, or somehow related to John Bonham. I got to fact check myself, and I'm not sure if that's true. But there was a cello player, two guitar players, and a drummer, and it was kind of like more of an acoustic version, acoustic set. But I'm telling you what, it was amazing. But the name of the group is called Saving Grace. He did 3 or 4 Led Zeppelin songs, kind of rearranged them and redid them. But it was amazing. I talked to Al. My dad was recording a song. Let's see, who was it? With Gordon Smith, maybe. And actually, Allison called into the studio, and I got to talk to her. I got to meet her on the phone for the first time. And I'm a huge fan of Alison Krauss. She's always been, one of my favorites. Just her angelic voice and her ability to play the fiddle. But Robert Plant, at his age, even my dad's that way. They have that timeless voice where they can sing, in their 70s, and it was amazing. So if you get a chance to see him on tour, Robert Plant is an incredible show. I'm going to Vegas next week to see the Eagles at the Sphere. I saw them a couple months ago, and I got to go again. I got to at least see them twice because that show blew my mind too. So if you haven't been to the Sphere yet in Las Vegas for a concert, you got to go check that out. So
I have not been. We're going to Vegas in July. Okay, so I have a big question for you, but I saw the Eagles. I think it was like August before the pandemic. So was that 2019? I saw them in DC at I guess it was called FedEx Field back then. I think is where it was. Outdoor, him and James Taylor, just spectacular. I mean, I can't even put it into words. But yeah, okay. So here's my big question though. And obviously, this is tell me the best of your knowledge. Because I saw, again, YouTube videos or something with Robert Plant and Alison Krauss. Alison Krauss, obviously a Christian. She's got tons of gospel songs and just phenomenal. I'm a big Alison Krauss fan also. But Robert Plant, I never saw anything about him being a Christian, and the whole Led Zeppelin thing from back in the day doesn't exactly lend to you thinking that he's a Christian. But I was like, if he's with Alison Krauss and he's singing these songs, like, man, I literally was praying for Robert Plant, and I never, prayed for Robert Plant before. But when I saw those videos, I was like, Lord, if he doesn't know you, soften his heart and let him come to know you or something. And this was only just a few months ago. So he may have become a Christian years ago for all I know. But I just
I haven't dug into that, right? But, the name of his group is called Saving Grace, right? And so, it wasn't, I'm not going to say that it was like a Christian kind of a theme to it, but I think it's, look, let's face it, as you get older, your mortality becomes more and more real to you, right? And so you would think, maybe he's, he's had a change of heart. I don't know where he stands with all that. I haven't done any research on that. Okay. But I will say, it was a very positive show. It wasn't like a Led Zeppelin show, so to speak.
Right.
But anyway, so I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, as they say. I love to listen to music. I like almost like the pop culture trivia kind of stuff about music also, right? Like I don't know if that makes sense. But definitely a big Robert Plant, and he had the Honey Drippers back in the 80s, and just everybody obviously knows Led Zeppelin. But I think one of the one of the most iconic lines in rock music history, but one of the worst lines in rock music history is Stairway to Heaven, where Robert Plant sings, "There's still time to change the road you're on."
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's supposed to mean that, but to me it's saying, live it up, have a good time. There's always time to change the road you're on. And great song, but I'm just like, I remember literally telling my kids, that is wrong theology right there. Like, don't think that way, right? That's not great. So it's just amazing that we're even having this conversation just, about Robert Plant, of the stuff in the last few months that I saw. And literally, I'm not going to say I prayed for him consistently, but there's been quite a few times where I see something about him or something, it just reminds me. And I just, say a little prayer that, he comes to know the Lord, because
yeah, for sure,
everybody needs to. And you're right. The older we get, the more it becomes very evident that we need to think about the road we're on.
Time is undefeated.
That's right. That's right. Chuck Norris found that out, last week or the week before? If Chuck Norris can go, anybody else can. So, but yeah, okay. So then we got up to the point to where you and I met, and people watching this, they don't know. I've been doing things in sales and marketing for my entire life since before I was 18 years old. And Shawn's company Loop brought me on board to help acquire locations. And we did, I think, a pretty decent job of that. We had over 3,000, I think 3,200 and something locations across the country. So that's how this relationship started, I guess. And then it kind of just moved into a bunch of other stuff. And what I call a friendship. I've been up to Louisville to hang out with you for a few hours and stuff. You came down here to Nashville to hang out. And I actually called you up and asked you some advice on some financial stuff. And, I just really value the friendship and the opinion. And, I learned a long time ago that wisdom is leaning on other people's knowledge and experience, not trying to figure everything out on your own. And I think sometimes we have to pull ourselves and reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know more in this area than I do. Can I pick your brain for 10, 15 minutes or something like that, and just, tell me what you've learned? And I appreciate the opportunity to have done that quite a few times, to be honest, over the course of the last, I've been close to 5 years now. At least 3 or 4.
So.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quick time flies.
What's that?
It's amazing how time flies. You blink and the month is over, then you blink again and the year's over. And you're like, wait a minute, the Kentucky Derby's coming up in 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought we just went to Derby. It's already here again? So
yeah. I had a Korean lady that used to cut my hair when I lived up in Maryland, and she said there was an old Korean proverb that says, time goes by at the speed of your age. So if you're 5 years old, it's going 5 miles an hour. But if you're 50 years old, it's going 50 miles an hour. And if you're 75,
I've never heard that before, but man, that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, okay. So we got up to the Loop deal, and I know that there's been stuff since then. So anything you want to share from that realm?
It's totally fine. So, there are, in life, it took me a while to process what happened with Loop. And for those of that are watching that don't know, I took a company pretty much from a concept of an idea, and I took it, with a team all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. And as the original idea creator and father or founder, whatever you want to call that, of an idea, you become symbiotically tied to that. And so for me, as I went through that process and things, didn't go the way that I feel like they should have gone, and I really didn't have control, because once you bring stockholders into an idea and you bring other people and you bring different ideas that come into that, it changes, right? And for me, that's kind of what happened with Loop. It was an amazing idea. The industry changed as a whole, which caused some, undue pressure on the company. But then there were just other forces, outlying forces, that I didn't have control of. And so when I kind of made my exit, and Loop is still alive today. It's still, out there working. I don't keep up with it at all. But I just said to myself, hey, look, you have two choices when you kind of, something doesn't go the right way that you want it to go, you can either stay sitting down and stay on the sidelines, or you can figure it out, brush yourself off, learn from it, and then figure out what your next move is. And that took me a while, because I was still kind of tied to it. I'm still trying to fight for it. I even tried to buy it, out of the situation it was in. It just didn't really work out. And when I look at all of that and I look at where I'm at today with another concept, I'm glad that didn't happen. And so basically, what's happened is that, I have been able to get into partnership with a company that was incubated inside of Google. And what they did is they pretty much took the loop concept and they created a very, very sophisticated system around that. The same concept. However, you get in this package, you get free YouTube premium content. You get digital signage, right, like Loop had. But then there's a thing called Edge AI and what I call audience analytics. As you all know, when we're driving down the road, you have a conversation with your wife and you say, you know what, I think we've got a leak in the roof. And before you know it, on your cell phone, you got all these roofing contractors that come up, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the digital out-of-home space, which basically is any screen that you see that is not inside your home or on your phone or on your person, that's considered digital out-of-home. If you see a screen in the chiropractor office or in your local restaurant, or for that matter, even a billboard, a digital billboard, or a kiosk at the mall, okay?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that when advertisers buy advertising, there's two different roads that they can travel down. One is the digital out-of-home road, which basically means I cannot tell you exactly who's watching the screen, but I can tell you people are based on traffic pattern, people are watching the screen, right?
Okay.
You have connected TV, which is like DirecTV or your cable television, or your cell phone. If you watch Netflix on your cell phone, or you watch YouTube on your cell phone, that's connected to a person. They know who you are, technically, right?
Okay.
So it's a direct relationship that they feel they have between the advertisement and your direct purview, either at home or on your cell phone. That's why they call it digital out of home versus connected TV, right? Well, in the digital out of home space, there's been a war going on because advertisers are saying, oh, wait a minute, if I don't know who's watching the screen, then the cost of that should be a lot less. That's kind of what Loop got caught into. So the new company I'm working with has created, I'm actually in the development, it's almost finished now, what's called an audience sensor. And we're using Google's Edge AI system with a box, with a camera and a microphone, right? It basically doesn't do facial recognition, but it tells you how many people in the room, what the mood is in the room, are people looking at the screen, they're not looking at the screen. And so it's now about pulling in data, right? And so now really literally what we have a hold of is a game changer for the industry. And so and people say, well, that sounds like a good idea. No, this all works. I mean, I've got a dashboard on my computer that has every screen. Now we're in testing, right? Has the screen. It can tell you how many people have seen that screen. It's got AI built into it, right? I can put a logo on the screen. I can put any YouTube video, any music video playlist, right? I can do anything with it, right? And so now, not only is it you get higher CPMs on the advertising because we have the data to back up where it is, but we also have the data that all these AI companies want to do. For example, if people are watching that screen and you have a Ford commercial that comes on that screen, and people react more to the Ford commercial than they do the Toyota commercial, well, that data is very valuable. Okay, and this is the sophistication of where we are. This is a young kid out of Silicon Valley that's created this whole thing. And when I tell you it's the most advanced thing I've ever seen, it is. So what I said is, look, I'm not going to work for you. I said, but I have the experience to know how to build these networks, right? And I said, so what I'll do is I'll get into partnership with you, but I want to white label your product. Now, what he wants to do is he just wants to use it on an app. I said, look, the app's never going to work, from my perspective, because people turn off their TVs, and to get the TV back on, you got to go launch the app, and you got to do all these things. It's got to be hardware based, right? You have to have a piece of hardware, and so the hardware is going to be attached with what I call an audience sensor, right? And that audience sensor is going to be tied into that box, and so we're going to be able to read not specific information, but a whole lot of information about what's going on inside of that place. This is what Loop really wanted to do, but they could never get there, right? Now that I have the system, so now it's time to build, right? And so offline I can share a little bit more information with you, but it's very, very exciting and very, very advanced. And the other thing I'm doing is I have considered, because, we had the internet boom, right? The .com boom, right? Then it was the crypto boom, right? Everybody's in and around the crypto, right? The future, as we all know, and you would probably agree with me on this, the next boom is AI, right?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Here's the problem. I use Grok. I have Super Grok. I use it every day. Yep. It is like my personal assistant. It's the thing that, helps me figure stuff out when I can't figure it out. My better half started using it in her business. She's a defense contractor. And she was like, now I understand what you've been trying to get me to see. I'm like, yeah. Because she's looking at buying a new car, right? And so we take all these sales sheets and we open up a chat and we start building a profile about this car. What's the best option? The value of the trade. Is that a good deal or a bad deal? What's the interest rate? Was there a better car out on the internet somewhere that we're not seeing? It'll go out and search for it. So it's an amazing tool. But the problem is that if I'm a small business and I might not be tech savvy, is there a business in and around providing AI agents or AI services that are very sophisticated to small businesses? So the team that I have around me are, executives. One built pretty much the Hulu advertising team. He worked at Viacom. My other partner owns a cable company. And so they're very sophisticated on the tech side, on the sales advertising side. I said, what if we were to build an AI agency that provided services to small businesses? And that kind of ties into what I'm doing with the media side, right? So when I put a player and an audience sensor in, well, these are all the things they're going to use. Let me go back to that and kind of walk through what the small business gets as my offering, okay? So they get the streaming player, they get free YouTube premium content, they get the audience sensor, okay? They get a share in the programmatic revenue of that screen, okay? They get a managed service, right? So the digital signage, whatever messaging they want to put in their business, we're going to manage that for them so they don't have to build that, okay? And then they get an offer to be able to come into our premium network, which is, I think it's $150 a month, and then we take their advertisements and put them on all the digital out-of-home screens in their area. I don't care if it's our screen or Loop screen or Atmosphere screen, right? So they're able to brand their business inside the premium network for pennies on the dollar what they could normally advertise with. And then I'm going to put a cell phone charging station in their business for free.
Wow. Okay, so, wait. They don't have to pay for the YouTube premium content. They don't have to pay for any of this stuff.
No, if they want to join, if they want to join the local advertising digital network, right? It's $150 a month. They don't have to, right? So
I would do that all day, every day, twice on Sunday.
Exactly, right? And what we're getting for that is we're getting the programmatic revenue, okay? Plus we're getting the sales on the data that we'll be able to sell.
Okay.
Right? So it's going to be successful. I'm chomping at the bit, right? Because it's like, there's so many businesses out there that we can help. And then if I throw in, the AI agency service, they're going to be like, okay, wait a minute. I'm getting all these services, so I'm trying to change the game because you like me, we've been in these small businesses. We know where they're deficient. We know the challenges that they have, right? So how do you bring something to them that's going to just help their business? And that's kind of where, my disconnect from the corporate loop company was is that they didn't never went into the businesses. They didn't understand what that was all about. You're right. And as an affiliate, someone that was representing the services, there was a disconnect there too, which drove me crazy. Right. So, if I have a rep that comes on and helps, that's the other problem. I want to make sure that if you put that screen in and that system in, you're going to get paid on that in perpetuity as long as you're with the company. Right.
Wow. That's huge.
So anyway, yeah. So I'm very excited. The contracts have been signed. It's all Google backed, right? It's the Google Edge AI system. It's their analytics system. This works. It's all functioning right now.
I got to tell you, most small businesses, I don't know if the owner would agree with. I don't know if they would say this if I just asked, "What's your biggest challenge?" But if I said, "I bet this is your biggest challenge," I think they would agree with me, and that is most small business people, they do everything there, right? If somebody calls in sick, they're filling in for that person. You're talking about a little mom and pop restaurant or any of that kind of stuff. That business owner has got his hands in everything. And so just like I was talking about me last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting over here on the sofa with my computer still doing stuff. That's what happens to these guys. They close up shop. They still have to do inventory, maybe order something to be delivered tomorrow, whatever they got to do. They still have to do everything. Everybody else went home. Clients, customers went home, employees went home, everything else. They're still there doing that. So now all of a sudden, if we can have an AI agent that can handle so much of those little extra things that the small business person is having to do after hours, that would be spectacular. And I think that's probably it would free them up to do so much more, whether it's just rest so that you're rejuvenated and can be more productive in a shorter period of time, or come up with new ideas, whatever it is, expand their business. Yeah, that would be spectacular to have an AI agent that really understands the business and can take over some of those duties.
Yeah, so I mean, the system we're working on is very sophisticated, and it's it's one of those things that I think it's the emerging market, right? So, I'm kind of pushing full force into that to figure out if that's a viable business model, which I think that it is. I was on the phone with the chief revenue officer this morning, who lives in Dubai, and we're kind of going through the numbers and looking at how the business works, and but I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah. Definitely a needed service. I don't know how you make it work financially, but it's definitely something that people would be excited about having their hands on and pay for. So,
well, even in I have a fitness gym, a commercial gym that I opened up because I was tired of driving 30 minutes to see my trainer. I decided to put one like a half a mile from my house. And even in my gym, I've never advertised. I've never, it's kind of just been a word of mouth kind of a thing. But I can see the AI agents being able to help even with that, right? You call in, somebody takes, if you advertise, the AI agent takes, can sound just like you, right? Can book the appointment, put it in the schedule. I mean, the whole thing is just, as smart as it's gotten. So I think people, can really utilize it. That's my goal.
Yeah, no doubt. And some people are, I don't know if we don't want to say afraid of it, but I can't think of a better word. They're skeptical, afraid, all the above. And I remember, my youngest daughter graduated high school last year. She's in her first year of college here at Tribeca in Nashville. And I remember us talking about, because like some teachers were like, no, you cannot use AI. And then other teachers were like, no, we want you to use AI because we know where it's going, and telling a high school senior, don't use it, this is cheating. And I understand in some instances you're not supposed to use it, right? But for the most part, to try to poo-poo this, like, we don't want you to learn how to do this, we want you to do it on your own. That's like in my generation telling us, don't try to learn how to use a calculator because, that's cheating or something, right?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. It's a tool to help us be more productive. You got to learn how to use it or you're going to get left behind. And there are people who didn't want to get on Facebook and didn't want to participate in e-commerce and everything, and they're no longer around because of that. So yeah, that's an awesome concept. I love it.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm very fired up that I got kind of a little bit of a scoop on that. Do you have a name for it or anything yet, or?
Yeah, it's called Focus Media.
Okay.
So the website I think it's partially done. You can go check it out, focusmediasolutions.com. It'll kind of give the highlight of kind of what it is. Um,
Cool.
but it's we're right now we're in hardware testing. So the audience sensor, because what happens is that you have a box, the audience sensor is tied into the box, and Edge AI, which is a very unique concept that actually processes AI at the most outlying level, right? How AI works now is that you're communicating with the big mother quantum chip, right? Or the mother quantum computer, right? In this instance, Edge AI is actually operating at the very farthest point on the device and processing that information and sending it in, right? So it's able to be much more efficient. It doesn't take as much power. So, yeah, but my goal is to build a 10,000 screen or 10,000. I'm calling it the Phoenix system. I'm building these about 10,000 of these, and we're gonna get 200 out first, and then we're gonna start to scale up, right? But I think it's
Nice.
gonna be massively successful.
So when you say 2,000 screens, how many? Because I know like you go into one restaurant or a bar, sports bar, there'll be 50 screens in there or something. But how many screens would you put in a
I
location?
only need one. I only need one.
Only need one. Okay. Very cool. Very good. And do you provide the screen, or is it a screen that's already in the facility, or it could be either one?
Well, it could be either one, right?
Okay.
It could be either way, right? So if we got us a pilot screen, we can do that too. Or if it's they have a screen that's kind of not being utilized, as we've noticed, even screens today, I walk in, some of them are just black because they don't keep them on, or they have a problem with the content, or whatever. And that's kind of where I want to manage that content. Their screen, I've coined the phrase screen strategy, right? Most businesses don't have any screen strategy. It's like
True.
ESPN and maybe one other one,
Yep. No, it's very true.
um, so yeah, so I'm excited. I think I'd love to have you involved in it. I think you know we've laid a lot of groundwork there, right? So it's time to you know go into the future a little bit. I think it'll be a fun project to work on.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I'm definitely down with that because, like I said, we had 3,200 and something locations. I think it was over 12,000 screens because we put more than one in, a facility. So,
Yep.
yeah, we, we, in my world, we rocked it. I don't know. Somebody else might think that's small potatoes, but we were very excited about what we were able to do
No,
there.
you did rock. You guys did rock it for sure. You
Oh,
understood what you understood the assignment.
we understood our assignment. We didn't understand anything else that was going on. We understood what our assignment was.
Yeah,
Go
for
find
sure.
screens. So that's what we did for sure.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
this has been awesome. I very much appreciate you joining in here, and I'm presuming you gave us a website and everything. It's cool if we put this out and people go to the website, not just me.
Yeah, yeah. Let them go check it out. Yeah, we'd love to send in a request. We'll see if you guys qualify, and we'll get a system out to you. It's just we're early in the testing phase. I've got the KPIs out to where the system has to meet so many metrics before I release it to the first 200, and then
Uh-huh.
I get the 200 out, get the test done, right? Make sure everything's functioning correctly. The back end is done. It's just how does the hardware communicate to the software, and it's just we're just making sure all the pieces are there. But yeah, we're
Yeah.
excited. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Very
I
cool.
went to the Consumer Electronics Show. The reason I'm saying this is I met the team at Napster, and Napster has this thing called the Napster Station. They're an AI company now. They're an AI music company.
I didn't even know
So
Napster
you
was
can
AI.
literally so you can literally download the Napster app. Shout out to Napster. I'd like to work on a project with them. It may happen, but anyway, but you can actually make music and publish music using Napster's AI station or app and make your own music, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
So instead of being a streamer of music by Napster, first they were a stealer, then they were a streamer, and now they're a producer, I think. But anyway, I thought it was kind of cool.
And we
Um,
got Shawn Driscoll and Shawn Mills, and Napster was Sean Parker, right? Isn't
that's
that the
correct.
Sean Parker? I
That's
guess he's
exactly
not
right.
around anymore.
Oh no,
Yeah.
the latest company, I think it was, they bought Napster for 270 million. It's a lot of change.
Seriously, I did not even know that was still a thing. That Napster was still a thing.
I didn't either until I showed up at the CES show. I walked on the corner and I met one of the new owners, and so he was a great guy. He called me the week later. He goes, out of everybody I met at CES, you're the guy that I wanted to follow up with and talk to. And I said, look, here's the thing. I said Napster has a reputation problem. I said, because most in the music industry, people saw you guys, even though there's been 4, Best Buy bought them, then Rhapsody bought them, I think. There's been a custody chain of owners. I said, but at the end of the day, Napster was about downloading and ripping music. I said, now you're going into AI, you want to make music. I said, what you have to do, in my opinion, is you have to go deep into the music industry and bring producers and do guest producers on the Napster AI system, right? So that a kid sitting in his room can work with a Benny Blanco, right? If he has a Napster app, he can.
So is it actually the producer, or is it the producer puts all of their kind of thoughts and talents and everything into the AI, and now it's an AI that thinks like that person? I don't know if you've seen this stuff. I've seen famous people like influencers and stuff like that.
That's my concept that I sold to them. I said, look, because I got into it deep with them. I was like, look, I said, this is what you should do. And of course, because they have producers in there that are they're AI people. They're not real, right? They're real, but they're not. So you can work with a rock producer. His name is, I don't know what his name is in here, but anyway. But my idea was bring the real identity of a guitar player or a producer into Napster, so you can start to repair that bridge between the music industry, Napster, and the music lovers out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I gave him that idea for free. So if you see Benny Blanco show up on Napster, you're going to know where that came from.
I know where it came from. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Hey, man, thank you for, stopping in, whatever you want to call it here, and sharing a little bit. That's good stuff. I always love to hear people's stories. I mean, I'm a story guy. I was the kid in church. I said this on one of the other podcasts. Like, I don't know if you did this, but back in church when they would have like there would be a children's story before the sermon, and all the little kids could run up front. Dude, I was like the first guy up there, man. I was like in the track blocks waiting for the pastor to say, "Come up front if you want to hear a story."
Well, you know what they say, right? They say that facts tell and stories sell.
There you go.
Right, so there you go.
Maybe that's been a little bit of my success there. I love to hear stories. I love to tell stories too. Just ask people to hang out with me for a little bit. They're like, dude, you got a story for everything.
Yeah, so, right, for sure.
I get a little bit of that from my grandfather. He was a West Tennessee farmer, and he had a story for everything. So
there you go.
Good stuff, man. Thank you very much.